For my biofuels project, I decided to do biojet fuel and I'm focusing on sustainable aviation fuel. So, for the introduction and background information on biojet fuel, it's basically a renewable fuel that comes from cooking oil, animal fats, agricultural waste, and etc. Basically began in 2016 and became an immediate tool to address carbon emissions. Fun fact is that the airline Virgin Atlantic in 2008 was one of the first few airlines to fly a Boeing 747 purely out of babusu and coconut oil. So how is biojet fuel actually cultivated? So there's three different sources of biojet fuel, and there's many more too, but I'm focusing on three in this case. So for energy crops, you harvest the seeds and then go through oil extraction. So for example, soybean and canola oil seeds. And then you have algae, which they photosynthesize and will produce oil inside the cells, which contain a lot of energy. And then you harvest with a centrifuge, extract the oils, and then convert it to sustainable aviation fuel. And some sources that they get this algae from is open ponds and also wastewater facilities. And then for waste itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. Collect the waste, remove the contaminants, convert it to fuel through gasification or pyrolysis. And examples of this kind of waste is animal fats, trash, or cooking oil. And obviously, this is very simplified down, but I will get into like the details later on. So, how the fuel is actually produced. So, this is particularly focusing on plants and algae as the source. So, the plants and algae will grow, and in their oils, they contain a lot of energy. And then through oil extraction and purification, so through centrifugation or chemical extraction, it will remove the contaminants. And then next, you have hydrotreating, which high temperatures will remove the oxygen atoms. And then you have hydrocracking, which will break down the large molecules and turn them into jet range hydrocarbons, which will then be refined in order to meet the jet fuel standards. So the development status, so for right now, SAF or sustainable aviation fuel is going through a transitional phase. So it's in between research and also commercial deployment. So for the impact on carbon footprint, sustainable aviation fuel is able to reduce carbon emissions by up to 80%. This is because the carbon released during combustion is basically counteracting the carbon absorbed by the plants, counteracting by carbon absorbed by the plants during their growth. So the economic impact for the pros, there's basically a lot of job creation and a lot of job opportunities that are created from sustainable aviation fuel. There's also a lot of investment opportunities and also just energy security. For the cons, it is very expensive and creates higher costs. It also requires continued innovation and also just technology as a whole. And there's also a limited supply. For public awareness, the public is able to see SAF in action through demonstration flights by certain airlines and also the airline web pages, which they demonstrate or they reveal like if they are using SAF or just the details of SAF on their web pages. And so for my analysis, there seems to be a possibility that biojet fuel or SAF will soon be able to replace current aviation fuel in the future. It's very sustainable and it reduces carbon emissions, but there are financial restraints and a lack of demand by the airline industries and just the government in general. So the next steps in order for SAF to become more renowned is for increased government funding and public awareness in order to make it a priority, especially by the governments and the public. So for the plan of action, in all consideration, minus the funding, is there needs to be more energy crop farms or waste collection systems. There needs to be more SAF facilities and storage at the airports or at major airports specifically. And then also SAF needs to be cheaper than fossil jet fuel in order for the demand to increase. And then perhaps even airlines need to fully switch to SAF. And then here are my credits.